Hello friends, Frogopolis here, and today I will be talking about the movie Stop Motion. As an art form, I've always found stop motion absolutely fascinating. When I was a kid, I'd watch Wallace and Gromit, and it would all be, well, magic to me. The fact that you could take these clay figurines and make them walk and talk and go on adventures. Then as I got older, I saw the more mature side of stop motion, with brilliant films such as Mad God, or TV shows such as Moral Oral. And with that, I learned more about the expertise and craftsmanship that goes into making this media, which increased my admiration for the medium even more. When it comes to the horror genre, the uncanniness and jerkiness to the movement and look of stop motion that I find goes perfectly with horror. So when I started seeing trailers for a movie literally called Stop Motion about a stop motion artist being tormented by their art, it was right up my alley. And this is the first feature-length film from Robert Morgan, who has already made a name for himself, making some of the most fascinating and disturbing horror shorts I've seen in a while. I'll preface this by saying that this is a positive thing in its own weird little way, in its own weird little horror way, but stop motion gave me a very visceral and disgusted reaction when I first saw it. Of course, there's the wonderfully grotesque figures throughout the movie, but that's not what got the biggest reaction out of me. I was more fascinated and interested by those. Great craftsmanship. And it's not even the almost too close to home realism of her depression. It was one of the kills right at the end of the movie. Now, you may have already watched the movie, but I'll give a little context anyway. Throughout the film, one of the few positive forces around Ella is her boyfriend, Tom. He tried to help her every step of the way, even when she was being the most difficult, and genuinely wanted what was best for her. You feel his confusion and helplessness as Ella's condition just gets worse as the movie goes on. She's dead set on finishing this project of hers. On Ella's end of things, she doesn't know how to handle herself when her overbearing mother has a stroke and ends up in the hospital. At first, she busies herself by trying to finish the project she had started with her mom. In her pursuit of this, she blocks off everybody both emotionally and physically, and creates a proxy of a little girl who quickly takes over and dictates her every move, just like her mom. This further brings out the worst in her. She's convinced to destroy her mother's work and start her own, and starts making a story of a girl being chased through the woods by the Ashman. And soon this very basic project becomes very literally consuming. Eileen Franciosi, who plays Ella, does a fantastic job at showing depression and grief. It can be hard to reach out to others, even when they're right there to help you. And it's unfortunate that she decides to lose herself in her work instead of taking time off and being with the person who loves her. It's clear she's lived a life in her mother's shadow. Her failure to escape it is heartbreaking. Of course, I also have to talk about the stop-motion figures themselves, which are admittedly a pretty on-the-nose metaphor for her internal turmoil, but also become more realistic and grotesque as the movie goes on. What helps make these figures look so realistic and grotesque is that she initially uses mortician wax before moving on to raw meat and then an animal carcass. Sorry to anyone who's been eating while watching this. And eventually, when finishing the project, uses a piece of herself. There's a few dream sequences throughout the movie where they come to life and interact with her that were really cool. In a particularly disturbing scene, in the last effort to save herself, she tries to get rid of the little girl, but finds that she's not going anywhere. It's at this point where any lines between reality and fiction are erased, and she knows she has to finish the project. And that brings us to the end. Near the end of the film, when Ella attacks Tom and his sister after they try to help her when she literally mutilates herself for her art, Tom is pushed down the stairs and he's very hurt. And while his sister is killed off in over-the-top horror movie fashion, he has a death that is far more raw and personal, as she simply suffocates him. I remember how taken back I was by this, and I remember this kind of sitting there thinking about it as the rest of the movie went. I was genuinely horrified by her killing her boyfriend, her last anchor to reality, this person who, for me, I've grown to appreciate by the end of the film. There's even a more visceral horror when you realize what him and his sister are going to be used for, now that Ella finally has the final pieces to finish her project. Here I am watching the worst possible outcome to this story, and I'm just transfixed watching as her creations come to life and one literally consumes her. In the reality of things, she simply bleeds out from her wound and dies, but in the movie within a movie, or I guess her afterlife, she walks into the cabin that's been the setting for her project and watches the finished product before putting herself in a box and closing it for good. How media affects us is really interesting to me, because I'm sure there's a lot of other people who watched this movie, liked it well enough, but didn't give it much extra thought beyond that. I love the fact that people can look at the exact same piece of media and come out with completely different views on it. If you're watching this, I assume you've seen stop motion, or at least thinking of watching it, and yes, I highly recommend it, even though it's pretty depressing. And I'd like to pose the question to you: how did this movie make you feel? Am I alone in having this visceral disgust at our main character's actions? What movie or other piece of media have you seen that stayed with you for a long time? I'd love to hear what you have to say. This video's a little different from what I usually do. I wanted to take a crack at looking at the deeper meaning of a movie and how it just makes me feel overall. I know this isn't exactly breaking new ground, but it was important to me, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it. A like and subscribe or a little comment would be fantastic, but I'm just happy you stopped by, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.